That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright guys, before we get into this video, I have a major announcement. Okay, so y'all know I've been getting a good amount of requests to make fantasy basketball content, and I stand by the fact that I don't want to be jamming down content down your throats that you really don't care about. So I know the majority of the subscribers to this channel really only care about fantasy football. So no, I am not going to be uploading fantasy basketball videos here, but I created a separate channel where I think we're going to be uploading a fantasy basketball video there every single day. I'm also going to be hosting some leagues for y'all to play in. These are going to be leagues that for anybody on Patreon are completely free. I'm just throwing up $100 for that first place if y'all can take it down, if y'all can beat me. Regardless, let me go down and in the comment section, I am going to be putting the link to our new fantasy basketball channel as well as in the description of this video. So if you would like to get involved, if you are playing in your own fantasy basketball league, that is where that's going to be found. I am not going to be uploading anything like that on this channel because I don't want to annoy the other viewers who really have no interest in basketball. That's completely fine. We're just going to stick it to fantasy football here. Very similar to how I'd say that we will never talk about politics or anything of that such. I just want to make sure that I'm giving you the exact kind of content that you want per channel. So that's why we have a separate Dynasty Fantasy Football channel. That's why we also have a separate basketball channel now. Here, we're just going to keep it with the main fantasy football content. Okay, well that's it. Now let's get into this video and let's talk about our top 24 rest of season wide receivers. And let's start it off with everybody's #1 wide receiver rest of season, Davante Adams. Okay, here guys, I know nobody's going to have an argument for any other player. If you do, for whatever reason, let me hear it down in the comment section because I really see this as one player clearly above everyone else in Davante Adams. I mean, he is just getting a consistent load of volume each and every week. It looks like Aaron Rodgers is right back to being one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL. Davante Adams is not only a wide receiver that sees so much volume, but also the efficiency is there based on his red zone usage. So really nothing bad on the Davante Adams profile. If y'all been following us for a while, y'all know that we actually had Davante Adams as our wide receiver 1 over Michael Thomas coming into this season. Extremely excited to see that paying off. I honestly did not even expect this type of production from Aaron Rodgers. I did not expect Rodgers to be this solid. The reason I had Davante Adams at 1 coming into the season was just they had no option behind him, so you could safely project him to be a player to see 30% of his team's targets. So yeah, I mean, the workload is elite as well as the efficiency. Okay, so now let's get to our second wide receiver playing with the best quarterback in the NFL, Tyreek Hill. Also a spot where I know nobody is going to have any problems with. I mean, if you have an argument for another player being ranked here at 2, let me hear it in the comment section because in my opinion, it's clearly Tyreek Hill. Yes, he's not going to see that overall workload of maybe a DeAndre Hopkins, maybe someone like a Calvin Ridley who are just soaking up so many targets in their offense. But with Tyreek Hill, we know that he's most likely going to be the most efficient wide receiver in the entire NFL, given the quarterback play and also his elite speed. And if you throw on both of those things, we understand that Tyreek Hill has a ceiling that cannot be matched anywhere else in fantasy football. Okay. So now let's go in here at number 3, and let's talk about a wide receiver that is surging in fantasy football, DK Metcalf. Y'all know earlier today I talked about him in our league-winning wide receiver video, and also I think that DK Metcalf is now the #1 dynasty wide receiver. Just if you look at his overall age-adjusted production, look at the fact that he's playing with one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the entire NFL with Russell Wilson. I mean, it is truly laughable that he fell so far in the 2020 NFL draft. I mean, can y'all imagine if the Kansas City Chiefs took DK Metcalf over McCole Hardman? I mean, the NFL would not be fair. They would have to shut down the league. They would have to force something in Kansas City because if Mahomes had Metcalf, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, I mean, can you imagine? Here, DK Metcalf solidly at 3. And coming in right behind him at 4 is his teammate from Ole Miss, A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown, yes, was a little bit disappointing this past week, but that was due to him suffering the injury at the very beginning of the game. That is what led to Corey Davis soaking up all of the volume here. But with A.J. Brown, he's in a very similar situation to a DK Metcalf, where his efficiency is just off the charts, and he's only getting better. I mean, he's like 22 years old. Not really a ton to talk about here. I mean, just a wide receiver that's playing in a very good offense with a very good rest of season schedule, and he's one of the most talented wide receivers in the entire NFL. Okay, so now coming in here at wide receiver 5, someone that we were aggressively targeting coming into 2020, Calvin Ridley. Okay, with Calvin Ridley, the reason that he's jumping up all the way up here to number 5 instead of around that wide receiver 8, wide receiver 9 range where he was a week ago is it looks like the Atlanta Falcons could just be shutting Julio Jones down for the season. I know we have not seen any reports come out saying that that's what they'll do, but knowing that Julio Jones was ruled out for this upcoming Sunday on a Friday where they really had no hope for him to play this week, what is the incentive for Julio Jones to come back into this offense at all in 2020? Personally, I don't see it. Julio Jones is like 32 years old. I think that Calvin Ridley is going to be a wide receiver stepping up into a 30% target role. And here in this offense that they're going to have to throw so often because of how bad the defense is, I think that's going to be an extremely valuable spot. And we know based on his career production up until this point, Calvin Ridley is a very talented NFL wide receiver. Okay, so now coming in here at 6 is dropping down slightly from where we had him previously. We are going to have DeAndre Hopkins. Okay, with Hopkins, guys, I know a lot of y'all are wanting to panic. I personally don't understand why. I mean, y'all know I am always one to take a step back. I don't want to be looking at small samples. I want to be looking at as many data points that we can get. So yes, DeAndre Hopkins has been a down wide receiver the past month or so, but here, the very same reason I told y'all to play him this past week against Jalen Ramsey is going to be the reason why he's still a high-end wide receiver 1 for me. I mean, this is someone just seeing an incredible rate of targets in the Arizona Cardinals offense. He's playing with a very talented quarterback, and at the same time, we know he is one of the most talented wide receivers in the entire NFL, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL at winning at the catch point. So there are a million reasons to be excited about DeAndre Hopkins. Please don't overthink the small sample. Okay, so now coming in here at wide receiver 7, someone that I dropped down considerably a week ago, called him a fast faller. Y'all wanted to make fun of me for it, and yeah, now a lot of people are coming right over on my boat, very similar to what's happened so many times this season. Just look back to me telling y'all that Darrell Henderson was going to get outproduced by Cam Akers in the fantasy football playoffs. You wanted to pick him up. I think that now we're seeing the same thing. I mean, Keenan Allen coming in here at wide receiver 7. Not only is he going to be lowered because of the inconsistency of the Los Angeles Chargers offense, but we just have to naturally understand that with Austin Eckler seeing about 10 to 12% of this team's targets as a floor every single week, that is going to take a little bit away from every other wide receiver or pass catching option in the offense. That's going to include Keenan Allen, so I think he is going to be a mid wide receiver 1 rest of season for us. So coming in here at wide receiver 8, we are going to have Stefon Diggs. Okay, so with Stefon Diggs, this is a wide receiver that is the alpha option in his offense. He has a very tough matchup upcoming with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that defense just shut down Terry McLaurin. But here with Stefon Diggs, clearly he has the upside that I don't think really any other wide receiver outside of a Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf can match, because we know that Diggs is that elite deep threat option, and he can also run routes in the intermediate area of the football field. And Josh Allen has upside that can only be matched by Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more inconsistent, and that's why he is down here at wide receiver 8 instead of being a high-end wide receiver 1 for us, is due to that consistency. But with Stefon Diggs, the ceiling is there. Okay, so now coming in here at wide receiver 9, we are going to have someone that looks like they are currently surging compared to where they were earlier this season, Michael Thomas. Okay, so guys, I know the elite production has not been there yet for a Michael Thomas, but we have to understand that this overall offense has not really been putting up a ton of passing statistics. And this is based on the fact that they do not have Drew Brees. They have Taysom Hill. So instead of looking at the overall raw numbers for Michael Thomas, what we need to be focusing in on is the market share numbers, so we can translate that over for when Drew Brees comes back into this offense, and understand that if Michael Thomas is a wide receiver seeing 30% of his team's targets, if that target number for the overall offense goes up, Michael Thomas can hit a ceiling that he has yet to show in 2020. So Michael Thomas is going to be a wide receiver that is rising in fantasy football. Okay, so now coming in here at wide receiver 10, this is going to be the highest we have ranked him all season, even though the entire season we have been above consensus on him. We are going to have Justin Jefferson. I don't know how many times I have to argue with you all about this. Justin Jefferson is the wide receiver 1 in Minnesota. I am done hearing the other side here. Jefferson is the guy getting all of the air yards. Justin Jefferson is the #1 option for Kirk Cousins out of everywhere besides the red zone. Guys, the red zone usage is the most volatile usage across the entire football field. So if we see some positive touchdown regression for Justin Jefferson, some negative touchdown regression for Adam Thielen, I mean, this could be a bloodbath. Justin Jefferson could blow him out of the water. Okay, so now coming in here at wide receiver 11, we are going to have Terry McLaurin. Okay, with Terry McLaurin, I know he's coming off a very down performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and a couple of y'all in the live streams have been panicking as of late, but personally, I'm completely fine with Terry McLaurin. It was a very tough matchup, and on top of that, we've seen him be one of the safest wide receivers in fantasy football in 2020 so far, based on the amount of volume that he is getting in that offense. So please don't overthink it. Terry McLaurin is a perfectly fine option. Okay, so now coming in here at wide receiver 12, we are going to have Tyler Lockett. Okay, so here with Tyler Lockett, another wide receiver that is drastically falling in fantasy football. Y'all know that I was really stubborn a few weeks ago, wanting to rank Tyler Lockett as the wide receiver 6 rest of season, despite his recent struggles, because we were looking at the overall upside that was tantalizing. And I mean, this may have been my weak point in the 2020 fantasy football season. Y'all know that I am always completely transparent in telling y'all where I was wrong, just like I said earlier in the video today, where I had to apologize for me doubting Chris Carson's usage earlier this season, as I had that Rashad Penny bias working against me. And here with Tyler Lockett, I think that I was just focusing in on those massive performances, which were really outliers so far in his season. So I'm still going to be a little bit ahead of him on consensus based on the fact that we still know that those are in the range of outcomes. But yeah, I mean, that ranking that I gave him a few weeks ago was just way too aggressive. Okay. So now coming in here at wide receiver 13, we are going to have someone that I think is going to be a league-winning wide receiver this season, and this is going to be Allen Robinson. Okay, with Allen Robinson, not only is he one of the most premier wide receiver talents in the entire NFL, not only is he seeing a ridiculous amount of volume in terms of his overall target share number in his offense, but on top of that, he actually has a very nice schedule rest of season, something that we need to take notice of. And with Allen Robinson, he's going to be ranked here as a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. Okay, so now coming in here at wide receiver 14, another player that made our league-winning video. This is going to be a Chris Godwin, especially now that it looks like Mike Evans could be missing some time in Tampa Bay. I mean, Chris Godwin looks like he could be a complete smash because we know this Tom Brady offense is going to move the ball down the field regardless of who is out there. We've seen this with Scotty Miller. We've seen this with Justin Watson. I mean, pretty much any wide receiver you give Tom Brady, he is going to make them productive. And with Chris Godwin, I think he's going to be the de facto wide receiver 1 by a wide margin because Antonio Brown has been hilariously inefficient so far in 2020. Chris Godwin has looked like one of the most premier wide receivers in the NFL, just like an Allen Robinson. And I think the situation is getting better, as well as him having a fantastic rest of season schedule. Honestly, I would not mind if you had him a little bit higher than this. Okay, so now our next wide receiver coming through is going to be a Deontay Johnson. Now with Deontay Johnson, this is probably my biggest leak in my 2020 game. I mean, I was way too low on him coming into this season, way too high on Juju Smith-Schuster, but y'all know I am not going to be biased. I am not going to be reluctant to make that switch after we've seen it time and time again that when both of these wide receivers are healthy, Deontay Johnson is the guy getting the volume. It's not Juju. Deontay is clearly the wide receiver 1 in Pittsburgh, and we know that wide receiver 1 role is going to be coming with at least 10 targets every single week. Okay, so now coming in here at wide receiver 16, we are going to have probably the hardest wide receiver to rank on this list. It's going to be Julio Jones. Okay, obviously with Julio, guys, if he was 100% healthy, he would be a top 5 wide receiver, no question. I mean, he has the talent, he has the situation. The problem is, I just think that it's in the range of outcomes for a Julio Jones to get shut down for the entire season. So when we're looking at fantastic options like a Deontay Johnson and Chris Godwin and Allen Robinson, I mean, it's going to be hard to rank Julio Jones over those players. Let me know what you are doing with Julio in the comment section below, because personally, I am very confused. Okay, so now let's go with our next wide receiver, someone that I know y'all are probably screaming at me to have a little bit higher than this. But Adam Thielen, guys, with Adam Thielen, he's the wide receiver 2 on his offense. I don't care. They're going to be force feeding the ball to Dalvin Cook as well. Justin Jefferson's going to be soaking up all of the air yards. So Adam Thielen is really relying on that touchdown equity in this offense, which he has had so far in 2020 to be that high-end wide receiver 2. And here we're going to have him as a mid wide receiver 2, just baking in the fact that we could see some negative touchdown regression on an Adam Thielen and just see more of those touchdowns possibly go to a Dalvin Cook or a Justin Jefferson. Okay, so now coming in here at wide receiver 18, we are going to have someone that did not necessarily live up to expectations this past week, but I think he should be a smash rest of season. Brandon Cooks. Okay, with Cooks, guys, I don't know how many times I have to say this. Yes, we are not going to be projecting him to be the same type of talent as a Will Fuller. We are not going to be projecting him to go out there and score the same amount of points as DeAndre Hopkins would in this offense a year ago. Yes, he is now the de facto wide receiver 1 there, but based on the profile of a Brandon Cooks, he's going to be a little bit more of that field-stretching wide receiver and not necessarily that guy that's getting a ridiculous target share just because he does not have the size. He also has the concussion concerns where you cannot be force-feeding him the ball over the top every single play. Brandon Cooks, though, is seriously a very safe option, though, just because if the Deshaun Watson-led Houston Texans want to move the ball down the field, I mean, it's going to have to be through Brandon Cooks. Okay, so now our next wide receiver coming out here at wide receiver 19. I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive on him than most fantasy analysts. This is going to be a Robbie Anderson. Okay, so with Robbie Anderson, he has so many things working in his favor currently. One, he has been soaking up all of the volume in Carolina. At least if you take a step back and you look at what's happened in 2020, he has been the clear wide receiver 1 there. I know there has been a trend as of late of DJ Moore getting the targets in that offense and DJ Moore expanding his role, not necessarily being just that vertical threat, where Robbie Anderson is seeing some targets getting taken away from him. But now DJ Moore is not only on the COVID list, but he's also dealing with an ankle injury, and it looks like we just may not get Christian McCaffrey back into this offense in 2020. And if that's going to be the case, are any of us going to be surprised if Robbie Anderson comes away with 11 or 12 targets in this offense? Personally, I am not. I think that Robbie Anderson is playing in one of the best situations you could ever find with Matt Rule and Joe Brady as your head coach and offensive coordinator. And on top of that, it looks like he is going to be their alpha wide receiver target. Okay, so now let's come in here at wide receiver 20, and let's just mention him real quick. Robert Woods. Okay, guys, with Robert Woods, what is so appealing is his Week 15 and Week 16 matchups. I mean, he's going to be going up against the New York Jets and the Seattle Seahawks. I don't want to spend a ton of time talking on Robert Woods because at this point, we all know the type of wide receiver that he is. But here, looking at those two matchups, it's going to be fantastic. And that's why we are also going to have Cooper Kupp at wide receiver 22. Here with Cooper Kupp, he has not necessarily had that same level of efficiency or same level of consistency as Robert Woods so far this season. But he has that fantastic schedule where I think we have to be aggressive with where we are ranking these Los Angeles Rams wide receivers. Okay, so now coming in here at wide receiver 22, we are going to have Mike Evans. With Mike Evans, the problem is we just don't know how serious that injury is. And if he's going to be missing the next 2 weeks, I mean, that's 66% of the rest of the fantasy football playoffs. I mean, so here we just have to naturally be a lot lower on him because we don't even know if he's going to be available. Okay, so now coming in here at wide receiver 23, someone that's a little bit more volatile than the other wide receivers on this list, Chase Claypool. With Claypool, the reason he has to make it is because he has a ridiculous ceiling. I mean, we could easily see Chase Claypool being the #1 overall scorer over the next 3 weeks. I don't think anybody would be surprised on that outcome. So here, Claypool going to have to be a little bit aggressive on him. Okay, so now our last wide receiver, someone that you could have ranked a little bit higher on this list, Amari Cooper. The problem with Amari is while I love the talent, I mean, why he's one of my favorite players in the entire NFL. I mean, he is just playing in an abysmal situation in Dallas right now with Andy Dalton. I mean, this offense has not gotten anything going. Honestly, Andy Dalton has been disappointing from what I honestly expected earlier on once we initially saw the Dak Prescott injury. Regardless, Amari Cooper is still going to be a top 24 wide receiver for us coming in here at this last spot. Okay, now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if y'all did, go out there, drop that like, leave that comment, subscribe to the channel. It really, really helps us out. And yeah, I'll be live streaming tonight, tomorrow night, and Sunday morning. I really hope to see y'all there.